Was Jesus ever claimed to be God? Can the prophets we know about, whether through divine texts or the writings of their biographers, truly be seen as they were? The paradox before us is this: every person, and let us set aside the divine books for a moment, is described by those who write about them. But what part of those descriptions can be considered truth, and to what extent? Whatever is said and written about Jesus, Moses, or Muhammad outside of the divine works becomes for us the main foundation through which we come to know these figures. In the Quran, much is said about the earlier prophets in detail, yet not as much about the one who was the bearer of its revelation. Prophet Muhammad, though mentioned by name, is not described in a way that lets us see his character through it. Instead, the other sources we have form the major ground for understanding his life, his experiences, and his character. In the case of Jesus, it was the apostles who recorded his words, and what we have today comes through them. Yet even in the Gospels there are disputes. For example, when they fled out of fear of Herod, did they go directly to Nazareth, or was it through other places such as Egypt, where Joseph took Mary and the child? The two Gospels, Matthew and Luke, give different accounts, or perhaps it is better to say that they align in some parts, but one leaves out details that the other includes. A similar situation appears in the life of Prophet Muhammad. There are disputes about many events, and one small example is the first revelation. Traditions differ over which verse was revealed first, and even the most authentic sources are not always in agreement. The biographers, too, sometimes mention accounts that we do not find in the Hadith traditions. My point here is not to explain which version is more authentic or how to bring these traditions together to form a clearer picture, as the scholars of religion attempt to do both in biblical studies and in the study of prophetic narrations. Rather, my concern is how much we can truly gain from these sources to form a complete image of the person, whether it is Prophet Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Muhammad, or many others. Because of the scarcity of information, we find different schools and traditions arising. In Christianity, for example, there are different views regarding Mary Magdalene, seen in texts such as the Gospel of Mary or the Gospel of Philip. In the Jewish tradition, we encounter the question of who killed Goliath, since two different accounts exist, and as I mentioned earlier, in the life of Prophet Muhammad, we have numerous narrations, often differing in detail. All of these leads us to the question of what truly remains for us to know about these men of the past, and how accurately we can grasp their image. The life of Prophet Abraham, whether described in the Bible or the Quran, does not give us a complete picture of his personality. Compared to Jesus, he is not as well known to us, since the image of Jesus has been preserved in great detail. Some prophets are thus known to us more fully than others, while many are known only to the extent of their names. So the major question that now arises is this: can the writers and biographers who tell us the stories of the prophets, apart from drawing on divine sources, truly provide us with an accurate picture? And tied to this is a second question: how accurately can one person describe another? And to what extent can he truly understand the being of the one he seeks to explain? The second question has been a problem for thinkers for ages. The idea is that no person can fully define in words the character of another. In every case, what is described is shaped by the vision and understanding of the one doing and describing, the creation of his own mind, how he interacted with that person, and what he perceived of him. As for the first question, how accurate these accounts are and how complete a picture they provide, the answer becomes clearer once the second question is raised. For no one in all of history has ever claimed, or can they claim, to have grasped the whole truth of the person they describe. This holds whether we look to the New Testament, to the works of the biographers or to those who recorded the narrations of the prophets in the Islamic tradition. So overall, what remains for us is this: if the image of God is incomplete for Christians, and if the narrations of Prophet Muhammad cannot be said to contain everything that happened to him in his 23 years of revelation, then what are we meant to gain from this? Perhaps it is that we are not meant to go so deeply into such questions, for divine inspiration may not have intended us to know these figures in full detail. Or perhaps the message for us is something else, something already contained within the scriptures themselves, needing no further addition. For the Christians, I still cannot find a satisfactory answer to how much of the image of Jesus is missing, or how much of God seems lost in history. For Muslims, the question of how fully we know the Prophet Muhammad remains unresolved. Yet beyond these uncertainties, perhaps the more important task is to ask why this problem exists. Is it because we are not meant to seek further answers when none can be completely satisfying? And still, I'm not sure, how is it that God appears incomplete for some, and how is it that the Prophet's life is remembered only through fragments that cannot encompass his full 23 years? Thank you for listening. I hope I made my words clear. This has been a different kind of discourse, one without definitive answers. Perhaps the point is that these matters are more for belief than for cautioning. But then what else can be left uncautioned except those things that risk becoming delusions? So maybe the true caution is whether this limitation is in the end for our good. Thank you again, and I hope you share your thoughts, and see you all in the next video.